Well, it's summer 1959. We've spent 2 years in Guatemala. There are four of us now. David has been born here in Guatemala since we arrived, and we're completing the 2 years work with the agency and about ready to come back home. I've been accepted in law school at the University of New Mexico, and so things are really looking bright. Family's doing well, and then, as it often happens, very unexpectedly, Mary Jo begins to feel ill. Can't determine exactly what it is. We're still in Guatemala. So we're going to pause here and let Mary Jo tell how things were in Guatemala as she came down with the polio. Go ahead, honey.
Okay, and here we are again, my family. Another chapter in the Craig saga. Difficult to know exactly where to begin, but I don't want to go into too much detail, but it was I'd had a polio shot when I got to at some point when we were in Guatemala, and I'd also had a gamma globulin shot because a friend of ours got hepatitis, and then shortly after that was when I got sick. I noticed as I would step off a curb, I would feel an electric jar in my neck, and then subsequently, a day or two later, I started to lose the use of my right leg. It would just drag behind me. And we consulted a doctor there in Guatemala, and he said he suspected it could be polio, but they didn't know for sure. They had to send someone out to do a spinal tap. And so I was becoming more and more paralyzed and couldn't get out of the bed. And Wes, of course, had to be on the job because he was a critical part of the CIA transaction at that point. So he left this particular morning, and I had a maid that was supposed to show up, didn't show up. And David was in his crib, and Carol Leslie, I guess, was wandering around. And David was crying, and I couldn't do anything. And that was probably the most horrific moment of the whole thing for me. And then later on that morning, our washerwoman came, Louisa, and she took things in hand until Wes got home. But, okay, so that particular day later on, the guy came that took the spinal tap. And he just rubbed my spine with a little bit of alcohol. I didn't feel a thing. He put in the needle, took out the spinal fluid, and was gone. I didn't know at that point in time that it was such a delicate operation. Thank goodness I didn't know. And anyway, they determined, yes, it was polio. So we called Wes's brother Bob and told him the situation.
We had been just making arrangements to come home within the 2-week period. My 2 years was going to end just 2 weeks down the road, so
right.
It was right at the end of that, toward the end of that period.
Right. And told Bob the situation, and he was able to get us in at the UCLA hospital there because he was a student at UCLA working on his master's degree, and they said that I could come there cost-free on one condition, that I would be a subject for their students
medical students.
They're medical students because in the U.S. polio was pretty much wiped out, and they didn't have any patients in the hospital with polio. So if I would be like a fish in a glass bowl, they would take me in, as I said, cost-free. So I was there for 1 month, approximately 1 month.
In the hospital.
In the hospital. And they said that once I could get up on crutches, I could leave. So I was pretty determined to get up on crutches, and never ever considered the fact, that I wouldn't walk. I don't think they ever told me I wouldn't. I think they said I would probably walk, but would have paralysis on my right side, which in fact is what happened. But while I was there, Bob and Char were taking care of Carol, Leslie, and David. Bless them, they were just great. And Bob would visit me, as I recall, almost every day in the hospital. And on my birthday, Char came with Carol, Leslie, and David, all dressed up, with a big Carol Leslie carrying a big birthday present for me, and they wheeled me out into the lounge. And that was... that
would be June...
That's still... You take a breath.
Okay.
Okay, you're back again. Sorry. I don't think I ever cried back then. Maybe it's all coming out now. I remember I did have one visit that Char took me down, or Bob took me down to their home. I'd been probably a couple of weeks in the hospital, and Carol Leslie just waking up from a nap, and she just had on a little pair of underpants, and she walked up to me, just, I could see it was kind of a puzzled look on her face, and she came and just laid her head in my lap. She was all suntanned and with that white blonde hair, and I can still see that. That was a moment I'll never forget.
This photo, taken in June 1959 in Los Angeles at Bob and Charlene's home, shows Charlene holding our son David in her arms, and next to her is her son Robert Jr., and then Stephen to the left of him, and the far left is our daughter Carol Leslie. Okay.
Of course, I received physical therapy while I was at the hospital, and many times was laying on a gurney in the front of a classroom while the doctor would stretch my legs this way and that and show the students what I could do and what I couldn't do. And I wanted so much for them to put me in that hot swirl tub, but they never did, and I never understood why. But then in retrospect, I think it could have been maybe because I was pregnant, and there was some risk in that somehow.
Pregnant with?
With Judy.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so the month's up. I'm on crutches. I can get out of there. And my mom flew down to be with me in the flight to Albuquerque to join Wes. And I remember very vividly Bob carrying me up the airplane stairs as we were getting ready to leave. And I'll be forever grateful to Bob and Char for those years, for that time that they were so kind and caring for the children and for me.
Go.
Thank you, Bob and Char. You're probably wondering, where was Wes during all this time? Earlier, when we first arrived at the hospital, we had to make a decision. While we were in Guatemala, we had made plans for for Wes to go to law school in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we felt very good about that decision. And so when Wes and I were trying to decide whether he would stay in Los Angeles, get a job, or go on to Albuquerque and get a job and get things established there for us, we decided that he should go on to Albuquerque. So he's been there meanwhile and found a job in land real estate and found us a little hovel to live in.
What a lousy apartment, though.
And
temporarily.
yeah. So we...
hot summer in Albuquerque, New Mexico,
yes.
with no air conditioning.
Yes, and my mom, who was with me, she subsequently was with us for 6 months. There she was, going through menopause, hot flashes, and in this hot little kitchen day after, and taking care of David and Leslie, and then, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. But we moved from that little place.
Thank goodness.
Into a home
We bought on the
we
GI
bought on
Bill.
Monroe Street, isn't it? And
Yes.
so it was a little better situation. And of course, then Judy was born, and Mom had to take care of her. So Wes's mother was asked if she could come down to keep the other things going while Mom took care of the children. That was grateful to them. Couldn't have done it without them. But very stressful emotionally for them, for me, for the children, I'm sure. And so finally, when I felt like I could handle it, basically I just thanked them very much and said they could leave. Please.
Okay. This is the polio treatment center in Albuquerque where she went for help. So that's how quickly adversity can hit and the kinds of decisions you'll have to make and how you cope. Family helped out. My brother, his wife Charlene, my mother, Mary Jo's mother, all of those factors came into play, which you could not predict at the outset when you're making those kinds of decisions. But based upon courage and faith, those were the choices that were made. And life went on in our family.